Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. So there's got to be a reason why the weight is going over this side. Something's going on. Is it colder on there, on that side? Anyway, I hope no ladies come in and get the wrong idea. All right. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim saraswatim vyasam Tato jayamudire. Before reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil. And loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 27th day of December 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 10, the discussion between Jada Bharata and Maharaj Rahugana, text number 20. Sa vai bhaval loka nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vicharati apisvit yogeshwaranam gatim andhabuddhihi katam vichakshita grahanubandha savai bhavalok nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vichadatyapisvit yogeshwaranam gatamandha buddhi gatam vichakshit grahanubandha savai bhavalok nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vichadatyapisvit yogeshwaranam gatamandha buddhi katam vichakshit grahanubandha savai bhavalok nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vichadatyapisvit yogeshwaranam gatamandha buddhi katam vichakshit grahanubandha savai bhavalok nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vichadatyapisvit yogeshwaranam gatamandha buddhi vichanubandha savai bhavalo nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vichadatyapisvit yogeshwaranam gatamandha buddhi katam vichakshit grahanubandha savai bhavalo nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vichadatyapisvit yogeshwaranam gatamandha buddhi Zoom land? Anyone in Zoom? Dhanabari? All right, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Go ahead, try it.
I don't have Bhagavatam. I can't see properly.
Okay.
Thank you.
One more local. One more local. Savai bhavalo nirikshanartam avyaktalingo vichadatyapisvit yogeshwaranam gatamandha buddhi katam vichakshit grahanubandha saha, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, or His incarnation Kapiladev, Vai, indeed, Bhavan, your good self, Lokanadikshana artam, just to study the characteristics of the people of this world, avyaktalingaha, without manifesting your real identity, vicharati, are traveling in this world, apisvit, whether, yoga ishwaranam, of all the advanced yogis, gatim, the characteristics of actual behavior, anda buddhihi, who are illusioned and have become blind to spiritual knowledge. Katam, how? Vichakshita, may know. Griya anubandha, I who am bound by attachment to family life or worldly life. Translation. So King Rahugana is continued to speak to Jada Bharata. It is not a fact that your good self, is it not a fact that your good self is the direct representative of Kapila Dev, the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? To examine people and see who is actually a human being and who is not, you have presented yourself to be a deaf and dumb person. Are you not moving this way upon the surface of the world? I am very attached to family life and worldly activities, and I am blind to spiritual knowledge. Nonetheless, I am now present before you and am seeking enlightenment from you. How can I advance in spiritual life? Purport. Although Maharaj Rahugana was playing the part of a king, he had been informed by Jada Bharata that he was not a king, nor was Jada Bharata deaf and dumb. Such designations were simply coverings of the spirit soul. Everyone must come to this knowledge. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 2.13, Dehinosmin yata dehe, everyone is encased within the body. Since the body is never identical with the soul, the bodily activities are simply illusory. In the association of such a sadhu as Jada Bharata, Maharaj Rahugana came to the awareness that his activities as a royal authority were simply illusory phenomena. He therefore agreed to receive knowledge from Jada Bharata, and that was the beginning of his perfection. Tad vijnanatam sagurum me vabhigachet. A person like Maharaj Rahugana, who was very inquisitive to know the value of life and the spiritual science, must approach a personality like Jada Bharata. Tasmad gurum papadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam, Bhagavatam 11.321. One must approach a guru like Jada Bharata, a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to inquire about the goal of human life. Om jnana timarandasya jnanandana salakya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So King King Rahugana, he represents the soul who is waking up to reality, and a very fortunate soul who appreciates the value of someone who can give him proper knowledge. Here he's again assuming that he's a representative of Kapila Dev, an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, but still, this Rahugana, he has the tendency to speculate, right? He's assuming here that Jada Bharata is faking at being deaf and dumb because he wants to examine people and see who's actually a human being and who is not. In other words, who is really receptive to the message of transcendental message that he's able to give. Are you not moving up on the way of the surface of this world for that purpose? And then he confesses, or he reveals, I'm very attached to family life. So he's taking an honest assessment of his own situation and coming to the conclusion, therefore, I now am asking you to enlighten me. How can I advance in spiritual life? So he's got something wrong here. Jada Bharata is not trying to examine everybody. He's still, Jada Bharata, if you recall, he was doing this as a defense because he didn't want to associate with the other materialistic members of his own family. Remember? So this was like a way of keeping his distance. And you'll find when Jada Bharata finally speaks now, he says something very similar to what Krishna first says to Arjuna, which was, what you remember? Ashochana vashochatam pragyavadam shabashase gadasun nanusochanti pandita. You're speaking like a pundit, you're quoting the Vedas, you're doing, but you're not a pundit. Everything, you're lamenting for what is not worthy of grief. So you'll see that there's a very similar statement when Jada Bharata starts first speaking. And so that indicates he's taking the role of a spiritual master. And often the spiritual master's first role is to chastise the disciple because and establish the proper relationship and try to break his illusion. So, but in the purport here, Srila Prabhupada, he is explaining how this is almost like a standard position that we should take as conditioned souls in approaching the realized soul. And that is to confess that we don't know anything, that we're conditioned. Rahugana say, I'm very attached to family life and worldly activities, knowing that he shouldn't be. How can I break that attachment? This is the implication. And all of these answers and techniques will be given by Jada Bharata over the ensuing chapters, really. And of course, this is also for us, this instruction. So Srila Prabhupada begins, he is quoting the Shastra, Dehinosmin yata dehe. This is practically Krishna's first instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. Impressing upon the conditioned soul that we're not the body, you're a spirit soul, and that you're transmigrating through this very body, and that you've been doing this for ages. You just forgot. And this initial understanding that we're spirit, not matter, that we're eternal, not temporary like the body, and that the next understanding that what we do in this life and the consciousness we create will determine our future. And so this immediately introduces a certain urgency to engage seriously in the practice of yoga, Bhakti yoga. There's so many different yogas explained in the Bhagavad Gita, but it all comes down to fixing one's mind on the absolute truth in the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and purifying one's heart. Because all of these different bodies we've been through, there's a residue of consciousness and activities and desires that we're still containing in our heart. And these things come up one after another in this lifetime, and we become attracted to this. We want to go here. We have a certain mentality. And if that's all we know, then we're tightly bound, and we're going to stay bound in this cycle of birth and death. So, therefore, Prabhupada he quotes these two very important verses he would always quote about the need for approaching a guru, a spiritual master. The first one, tad vigyanatam sagurum eva abhagachet, that if one has as a goal vijnana, means realized knowledge of tat. What is tat? Tat is the absolute truth. One who has that goal must approach. Abhigachet, Prabhupada would point out when he quoted this verse, this is an imperative form of this verb, to go. One must go and approach this a guru, sagurum abhigachet. Now the rest of the verse describes what attitude one should have. Tad vignanam sagurum eva abhigachet samit pani shrotriyam brahmanishtam. So the summit pani, that describes attitude. It's symbolic. It means with firewood in your hand. In other words, in a very humble service attitude. And who is this guru? Shrotriyam brahmanishtam. He has heard from his own guru. He's fixed in the knowledge, the transcendental knowledge that is attained through hearing from the absolute truth from a realized soul. So there's this line going all the way back. Rahugana keeps tying Jada Bharata to Kapila Dev. I don't remember any direct link there, but I may be wrong. But the idea is that Jada Bharata is what Prabhupada would call a transparent via medium, or a transparent medium, a channel. Remember the old channeling? I don't know if they use that same channeling. He's a pure channel without any static or distortion. So that's the kind of guru we have to approach. And then this Tasmad Gurum Prabhadhetu. This is from Bhagavatam. This is the teachings of the Yogendras again in the 3rd chapter, 11th canto. And what precedes this verse is the Ila Gita. Some of you may know what the Ila Gita. Ila Gita is another name for Pururava, who became very attracted to what's her name? What is it? Purvashi, yeah. Urvashi, thank you, Urvashi. Heavenly damsel who had been sent down to attract him. And he became obsessed. Even though she went back to her planet, he was still longing for her. And so okay, one day a year or 3 days a year, you can come and be with me. And so this Ila Gita, he's finally what have I been doing? Or what I've been wasting my life and been attracted to this bag of, blood and bones. And it's very dramatic. And so after this, I think actually Krishna speaks this verse. Tasmad Gurum Papadjeta. No, he's the other one. He's saying, I'm sorry, I'm getting this mixed up. He says, where's that one where he says, what is it? Yeah, not Utsrajik. I'm sorry, I've got all of this setting. I have enough time hearing. Now I can hear better. What was it saying? Dalam Duk Sangha Utsraja. Yeah, I'm mixing these up. This is again the Yogendras. But yeah, what the Yogendras are describing here, is how it's impossible to be happy or achieve any real satisfaction in this world. He says, I forget the Sanskrit, he says, one should know that the plans to be happy in this world, man and woman get together and they try to build a life, they ultimately get exactly the opposite thing. That you become miserable and you have no happiness and you're faced with death and old age like that. And so that's the material life. Okay, well, what about the heavenly planets? So no, you go to the heavenly planets and there's all kinds of rivalry up there. Remember reading the 6th canto, there's a battle between the demigods and the demons, and the demigods are enjoying on their planets, and then these demons come and take them, and then they evict them from the planets, and then Vamanadev has to come, and, In other words, and even there, you're never fully satisfied, and there's always that understanding, this is going to eventually end. Krishna's time factor, is going to cut me down. So there's no peace, there's no happiness, even on the heavenly planets. So if one wants Shreya, ultimate good, real happiness that doesn't decrease, doesn't end, then one has to approach a real guru. And then the next half of the verse defines who that is. Shabde parecha nishnatam brahmanupashamashriyam. Prabhupada would always quote this. Shabde, this is the Shastra, which is heard. Pare cha nishnatam brahmani. The two forms of the absolute truth in the form of the realized Shastra, of the pure scripture, and param, which is shorthand for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's completely fixed in that, and Brahma upashamashriyam, and not attracted at all to the material world for sense gratification. So that's a very shorthand to understand who the guru is. So that approach is essential in order to open up the channel where you can actually receive the knowledge. And the attitude in which you approach is so important. With Samatpani, a humble frame of mind, receptive. As we see, Arjuna, it's the first example we get at the beginning of the Gita, 2nd chapter, text 7. He recognized, he was all Krishna's arrangement. He was put into illusion for that. He's an eternal friend of Krishna. But he was put into Maya for some time so the Gita could be spoken for eternal benefit for society. So he had all of these arguments why he shouldn't fight. The main reason he didn't want to fight, obviously, was that he was emotional. He had an attachment for his teacher and for his grandfather Bhishma and all the relatives and friends on the other side, the Kurus, But he had also argument from the Vedas, that the men will be killed, the women will be unprotected, it'll be Varna Sankara, no one will perform Shraddha, the Pitris will fall down, and I'll be responsible. No thank you, I'm going off to the forest, I can't. But he wasn't really at peace with that, so instead he just sat down on the chariot and was paralyzed. And then he approaches Krishna. Karpande dosho bhata sobhava. My sobhava, my nature as a kshatriya, has been taken away by my miserly weakness. He recognized that. And he was completely bewildered about dharma, or what's the proper thing to do. There's always a best action to do in terms of the benefit for oneself spiritually and for society at large. But we have to know what that is. So he set the mood, and we have other great examples, Sanatana Goswami, of course, and others. So one must approach a guru like Jada Bharat, a representative of the Supreme Lord, to inquire about the goal of human life. So we find this repeatedly in the Bhagavatam. The very context of the Bhagavatam is being spoken with Parikshit just hearing from Shukadev. Shukadev is the ideal guru, and Parikshit is the ideal disciple, hearing completely submissively without any distraction for 7 days, no eating, no sleeping, no anything. So that eagerness to hear, that willingness to hear, submissively, Prabhupada called it submissive oral reception or ardent hearing, is a basic qualification to hear to advance, and because it's a transformation, we're trying to undergo a total transformation of our consciousness, and that requires knowledge, and it requires the will or the desire, the determination to actually undergo a sea change in one's consciousness. And so this is what, Srila Prabhupada's purports are always bringing us back to the essential knowledge that we need to know. And here we have, this dramatic situation where Jada Bharata has revealed himself to be a realized soul, and Rahugana is doing the right thing, taking advantage. We have the same thing when the four Kumaras visit the arena, Pritu performing sacrifices. And he takes advantage. He starts questioning them, and they enlighten him with some wonderful instructions. And the same thing is occurring here, and occurs in various places, where those who are wise, they immediately take advantage, because time is of the essence. The great sages, and they're always traveling. So when you get a chance, Narada Muni, he had a great chance because they had stopped for 4 months of the rainy season, and he got a chance. He didn't really know so much what he was doing, little child, but because he was submissive, performed some service, and took the remnants, he got a taste for hearing Krishna Katha, and that's one of the great benedictions of serving the great souls and practicing devotional service. One becomes attracted to hear about Krishna, which is the first qualification for advancement, is this attraction for Krishna Katha. So, this is a universal instruction. This is why, these books will never get old. Just like the Bhagavad Gita itself, it's not old. Oh, it's a book from 5,000 years ago. What do you have to need that? No, you read it and you realize this is for everybody. I need this knowledge. Like when you read the Gita for the first time, it says, it's so wonderful. Obviously, you had some credits on your previous life, I would say. But so it affects people differently. Some people say, no, it's not my belief. Like that, what was that devotee walking around this town? Everyone was a nun or a monk, and there were so many churches, and he was getting, no, that's not my belief, that's not my belief, not my belief. But then he found some monk who had gotten into, was he reading the Bhagavatam, second canto or something? I think he was reading one volume of the second canto. And he treasured the book, because it struck him, he was a genuine seeker. And so so you never know who there. That's why the Sankirtan devotees, they're open to anybody, right? They don't reject on externals, because someone could be very open to taking a book and beginning Krishna consciousness. I mean, that was Prabhupada's mood. It was kind of understood that the people in the West or outside of India, they're disqualified. Yeah, we could try to spread, within India, but outside, those mlechas and yavanas, which mean they didn't really read the Bhagavatam. Kirata Hunanda Pulinda Pukasha, right at the beginning, second canto, Sukadeva Goswami is his prayers before he starts really speaking to Pariksit. Kirata Hunanda Pulinda Pukasha Abira Shimba Yavanakasharya Yen Yeta Papa Yedapa Shaya Shaya Shudyandi Tasmai Papa Vishnave Namah. So Sukadeva is offering his respects to Vishnu, and it says someone who surrenders to someone who surrendered to Vishnu, Ashriya, in other words, a pure devotee, then they may be Kiratas, Hunas, these are different outcasts. They're far away from the Vedic culture. They live in Mongolia somewhere, or, and they have absolutely no qualifications. But if they have that one qualification of being willing to hear and surrender to a pure devotee who's taken shelter of Vishnu, then they can be purified. They can become Brahmins. They can become gurus. This is revolutionary. What she said, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Nasi, Shuddha Noi, Ye Krishna Titra Bhatta Se Guru Hoy. Some of you may know the context of this. Ramananda Roy, conversations with Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, he took the role of the student, you know, because he'd heard about the qualifications of this Ramananda Roy from Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And Ramananda Roy was a little hesitant because he was in the social position of a Sudra. Although he was the governor of Kayasta, I think, he was, you know, he wasn't. And so he was thinking, no, this is this effulgent sannyasi here, and I'm supposed to teach him. He was a little hesitant. So Lord Chaitanya said, what's the problem? One may be a Brahmin, a sannyasi, or why not a Shudra? If whoever knows the science of Bhakti can be a guru. And knowing the science of Bhakti means knowing it and living it and embodying it. And that was Ramananda Roy. He was extremely advanced in the higher reaches of the rasa, tattva, and everything. And Lord Chaitanya kept asking him one question, taking it further and further until he got to the highest levels of Krishna's relation with the gopis. But that verse is very important because Prabhupada, he saw that verse. He said, "This is, you know, this is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya." And the other one, Kirata Hunandra, and this is the mood of his own spiritual master in Lord Chaitanya. And he didn't hesitate to go out of India and come to New York City. You know, and which is anything but a place where you could expect to find submissive all hearers to the message. And he didn't at first. It was very difficult. But they were there. And they became purified and were able to make others devotees. So that's what's going on. So let's see. Covering let's see. So this idea that material activities are illusory. I was thinking, we've been working on the Gita lately, going through and trying to finalize the text finally. And so one verse sticks out. I forget the Sanskrit now, but of the what is it? The idea is that the spirit is existent. And matter is non-existent, in the sense that it's temporary. It's constantly changing, and it's certainly not what you think it is. This is the whole idea: is that this body is real but temporary, and therefore falls into this category of asat. What is it? Nasato vidyate bhavo na bhavo vidyate sitak ubayo vidyate. Yes, that's it. Thank you. So for the asat, there's no bhava, means there's no real existence. And for the sat, there's no change. It's eternal. So there's no non-existence. So what is existent? What's non-existent? We don't really say, well, this body isn't existent. We say it's temporary. All of this activity, everything we see, we normally experience with our senses and mind. It's all this asat. It's constantly changing. And we know that eventually it all ceases, right? There's its big annihilation, and nobody lives through it. All the living entities are killed, and I mean, not the living entities, the bodies are killed, they're ended, and all of the different elements revert, and they all get merged back into Mahavishnu ultimately. I think with the intermediate destruction in the Garbhodaksha Vishnu. But then for millions of years, we're in a state of suspended animation. We're not dreaming, we're not thinking, we're still alive, but nothing's going on. Until Mahavishnu breathes out, and suddenly everything starts all over again in this whole complicated creation. And then eventually we take up where we left off, and we got another body, and we keep going. And we don't know anything. We just know, here I am, you know. And you grow up, and gradually your consciousness develops, and you pick up where you left off. So that has been going on since time immemorial, and that's why it said anadi karma pale, no beginning. Prabhupada explains this. That means it's previous to the beginning of the universe. That's Prabhupada's famous phrase, since time immemorial. In other words, we can't trace out when this all started, this thing. But we can work toward ending it, because this is not a place of happiness and security. All of that is illusory. And periodically, in the individual life, and sometimes collectively, it becomes very obvious that whatever I thought I had in terms of security or happiness, it'll be destroyed very soon. Maybe it's the time for the bomb to hit that's coming over. 20 minutes. You got 20 minutes to take stock. Now what would we do? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Kirtan. Just can be absorbed in the holy name. What else is there? I mean, what else is there right now, really? But that's our shelter. That's what he wanted to know. He's going to ask, what is the real shelter, right? The real shelter is Krishna, and the most accessible form is his holy name. And so that's why all the great, the chant ceasingly. I don't know if I spoke about this last night. I was mentioning that when it's very odd that I became a devotee, because I was raised as an orthodox atheist, with a philosophy behind it. It wasn't that I didn't happen to believe in God. My father trained me as a communist. So how did I come to this? So it was circuitous route. It wasn't direct, that was for sure. But what happened was that all of my aspirations, they were dashed one after another, and it wasn't really a personal aspiration. It was an aspiration for peace. In Vietnam, it was just this horrible war. Thousands and thousands of innocent people were being killed by my government. So I wanted to disassociate myself from that. So that was reading Thoreau and nonviolent. This whole thing, Mahatma Gandhi. That was the path that we were taking. Demonstrations and so that was bringing me to that point. But I had that sensitivity, to the suffering of these innocent people, and I was moved by that. And so that it's ruined my career, my educational career. I didn't say it was important. What's really important is stopping the war, all this stuff. But that was like a big effort over years. From like 64, 65, I started going on these demonstrations in Washington, D.C., till 68. And what happened in 68? After all that, Richard Nixon gets elected? I mean, I don't know if that means anything to you, but that was like, oh my God. He was a warmonger, and it just kept he kept the war going another 7-8 years. So it just seemed like with such frustration. And there I was with, the meaning of my life had collapsed. Now what, So that in that state, I got sick, and I needed a way to get better, and I took up yoga, instead of Western thing. And that was the beginning of my interest in the Eastern, philosophy and so forth. So Krishna was helping me, somehow. But that essential point of coming to the point, well, what is this all about? What is my life all about? What am I going to achieve here? And sometimes it comes in a shock, where all your hopes and dreams are dashed. And if you're fortunate enough to come in contact with a devotee or contact with Srila Prabhupada's books, and you're receptive, then that can be a real ray of hope, because this is a way out of the whole problem. This is a solution to the whole problem. It's claiming to be anyway, right? And the way it's presented so logically and eruditely, and it's obviously ancient philosophy. Well, let me check it out. And that let me check it out is your salvation. And that's, tad vijnanatam. There it is. If you want to know vijnana, which is realized knowledge, the ultimate truth, that's your goal, then you need a real teacher. And just open Prabhupada's books, and there's your guru right there. This is Prabhupada understood. This is how I can keep on preaching for the duration of this universe. And so he stressed it, and his sincere disciples took it up, and so we have this facility now. And we go through in the books a series of dramatic, really where the teachings take place, dramatic conversations. It may be Vitrasara, praying at the end there, or Queen Kunti praying to Krishna. All of these are kind of conversations, they're relationships, but it comes in the form of these dramatic scenes. The whole thing is dramatic with Parikshit and Shukadev, or Krishna speaking to Arjuna. What could be more life and death that? You're right in the battlefield, So we enter into that mood, and this is also for us. We're on the battlefield here. Who expected this pandemic? And now who really knows what's going to happen? You got all of these variants coming, Well, we know what's going to happen. Everybody who's alive now is going to die at one point. Right? That's not a mystery. And we also are going to leave this body. What are we going to do between now and then to make our lives as successful as possible? And it's a question of putting all of these instructions into practice and refining it, becoming sincere, praying, through the holy name. And Prabhupada says it's a prayer that please engage me in your service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. And we know from there's so many verses that how this holy name is so sweet. Madhura Madhura Meta Mangalam Mangalanam. This phrase is used in several verses. It's the sweetest of the sweet, most auspicious. Okay, I'm chanting, and I can experience some pleasure, but I don't experience super sweet, and what I mean. But we should know that that's what we can experience if we purify our consciousness. In other words, it's just like, even on the material side, I like to give the example. I grew up near New York City, and so, and naturally, we were from a family a little bit cultured, so I would go in and look at the paintings in the different museums. That was part of the culture there, Go to concerts. I remember we used to go to Carnegie Hall, made this famous Carnegie Hall, And we were communists, we're into Russia, so whenever the Russian dancers would come, we would go. But I saw an ad I never went, for the Bowels. The Bowels and the Owls? The Bowels are one of the upper sampradayas. Excellent singers and musicians, but they're sahajiyas, they don't follow any real rules and regulations. So someone had invited them to come and paid for their way to come to Carnegie Hall. I never saw that concert, but I realized years later, whoa, they were singing in Carnegie Hall. So I was into the artwork, and I was, there's Rembrandt, and Picasso and all these different things. So I didn't really know much, but then I got some books on the different things that are going on with fine art, the different schools and what the different things symbolize in the art, the meaning of it. And so I began to appreciate it in a different way. I looked at it with eyes of knowledge, and I started to see, oh yes, this is from this 14th century, and this is whatever, And that's really what we need to gain through the knowledge. The devotees see the deities different than just people who walk into the temple for the first time. And Bhadran Rama would say, someone came into the deity, they didn't even see the deities. They asked the question, what is the significance of the fountain and all of that? Yeah. Without any knowledge, it doesn't, you can't really glean it. There's some, generally, they look very nice, like that, which Prabhupada said is important. But what about these paintings? There's Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan party. Now, if you're a devotee, you've been on Sankirtan parties yourself, you've read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it has a lot more meaning than if someone comes in. Some kid comes in and just sees colors. So the point is that by gaining the knowledge from hearing from Prabhupada's books and reading them and discussing them and living them, then you see everything differently. You see yourself differently, you see this world differently. Your purpose in life is different than someone who's just trying to enjoy or make his way here. So the knowledge is essential. The knowledge is essential. And therefore we have these books. Srila Prabhupada dedicated his life to imparting the knowledge. And it's not just dry knowledge. There's a practice behind it. Like this chanting of these wonderful verses that we have here. Now we've come to a certain spate of actual shlokas, and we're going to go back to the prose again. I don't know why this fifth canto, but there's a lot more prose than any other canto. But the tremendous artwork, tremendous aesthetic value in the language itself and the way it's put together. And if you appreciate that a little bit, it just adds so much, and it's wonderful. You can have with you at all times, Rupa Goswami is describing Krishna's beautiful hair. He's got the peacock feather in there, teeth, just like buds. There's certain jasmine buds that are very white, they look compared. So it's a culture of knowledge, and your consciousness changes. And the various attractions of the material world are just like crying in the wilderness, no more, things. Wow, I used to be so attracted to do this, meet this person. Like our friend Govardhan, he had a different environment, and suddenly his friends say, hey, come on, Glenn, You're not interested? No, I'm not interested anymore. Thank you. So you can't keep those friends. You don't want them. You know, they can drive you away. So association is so key. So we've been given it all, and we can take advantage of it. And now we're going to have a very dramatic exchange between Jada Bharata, and he's going to start teaching this king, Rahugana, and we have the great opportunity to listen in and also appreciate the teachings. Any questions, comments?
Hare Krishna.
You're there. Go ahead. Oh, wait a minute.
Yes,
We have any locals?
Hearing your wonderful class.
Hare Krishna. Glory to Prabhupada. All right, Vijay, go ahead.
Yes, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prabhu, the quote from the purport related to the verse you chose for today, 5:10:20, is as follows. Quote, a person like Maharaj Rahugana, who was very inquisitive to know the value of life and the spiritual science, must approach a personality like Jada Bharata, end quote. So, in the context of this quote, my question is, what is the value of life?
It's funny you focus on that, because this phrase comes up repeatedly in Prabhupada's books. And there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, second verse, I believe, where Krishna says, Kutastva kashmalamidam vishamesamapasthatam manaya jistamasvagam makirtikamarjana. Where has this impotence come upon you? Kashmalamidam, this is impurity. It does not befit one who's an Aryan. Anayajistam aswag does not lead to heaven, leads to infamy. This is Krishna's first instruction. It's more or less one kshatriya to another. It's what the charioteer is supposed to do. He's supposed to buck up the fighter and try to, you know. But it's Krishna speaking, so it's absolute, of course. So this phrase, anayajistam, it doesn't befit one who knows the values of life. This is what Prabhupada said. This is what he typed. He typed part of that Gita, you know, at the beginning, the first, second, through almost the 5th or 6th chapters. So he's typing it out, the values of life. And he says the value of life. I'm going to look this up in the original. I didn't have access to it. If he may have said values. So there's two things going on. The value of life can living. What's really understood here is human life. Inquisitives know the value of human life, because all living entities are alive, but they can't inquire, they can't practice devotional service, so they're trapped. So that could be what Prabhupada means here. Or he could have said values, and they didn't know what that meant, and so they made it value. It's the editors, the rascal editors, one of them. So we have to investigate. But either way, I'll give an explanation. One is, if it's the value of human life, well, this is, a standard instruction we find in the Bhagavatam and other shastras, is that, what does it say? Nirdeham adyam sulabam sudulabam plavam sukalpam gurukarna dharam mayanukulena nabasviteratam bhuman bhavabdi nasaretsa atmaha. This is spoken by Krishna in Uddhava Gita, 11th canto. He says this human form of life is like a boat to cross over the ocean of birth and death. And then you play on words. Sulabam, sudulabam. Those words are opposites. Sulabam means easily attained, and sudulabam means very difficult to attain. Well, what gives? Is Krishna speaking some kind of puzzle here? So sulabam can also mean automatically. In other words, every living entity eventually comes to the human form of life. No one is eternally damned down there to just, mess around in the insect world. No. You lose the human form of life, you go down, but then you come back up again. So in that sense, it's sulabam. Everyone eventually gets the human form. But sudulabam, there's not that many of them. Sudulabam means that we're rare compared to the number of insects and bacteria, obviously. So the idea is, don't waste the chance. You got the human form of life. So it's a boat. So we need a captain. Nirdayam sulabam plavam sukalpam. It's a very nicely constructed boat. Guru karnadaram. And the guru, back to the theme of the verse today, the acharya who knows the Shastra in and out, lives it, and is willing to teach it. That's the characteristics of the Acharya and the genuine Guru. So you have a good captain. Okay, now we got what about the favorable winds? This is one of those big sailboats, you know, you read about sailing in the 19th century. You need a favorable wind. Krishna says, I give you the favorable wind, the teachings of the Vedas. Maya nukulpena nabasviteratam. You see? So then the clincher is puman bhavabdim nataret. That person, that living entity who doesn't cross over the ocean of birth and death, atmaha. Who knows what that means? Damodar. Atmaha. Yeah. Dadavari knows. We accept your answer even though I couldn't understand it. Yes, killer of the soul. Now you can't kill the soul, but you can postpone your advancement for a long time. In other words, you're ruining your chance in this lifetime for who knows how long. Atmaha, it's a phrase that comes up. So that's the idea, is that one has to know the value of human life and use every second to try to make it successful. Or the values of the values of life. We all have values of life. I've studied this in the last couple of days. So in the dictionary here, I got a quote from the. Oh, it went away. Wait a minute. Oxford English Dictionary. Yeah. Values, principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. So, Prabhupada talks about spiritual values of life. The values of life can also be, they value dominating others. In other words, it has to be what kind of values. So that could be what Prabhupada is mentioning here, is one very inquisitive to know the spiritual values of life and the spiritual science. And my opinion, it may not prevail, is that in that purport to the second verse of the second chapter, that Prabhupada is referring to the spiritual values of life. That's what the Aryans are, and therefore they have a spiritual civilization. Values of life doesn't mean anything; it's a neutral term. Oh, this Saul, he has qualities. Well, what kind of qualities? Very auspicious qualities, or is it, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything. Values, so it has to be qualified. The value of life, if it's the value of human life, then you have to have human life. So you have to understand what Prabhupada is getting at in context. It could be human life here. Very inquisitive to know the value of human life and the spiritual science must approach a personality. I don't know, it could be the spiritual values of life, but that's what that phrase means. It needs a little interpretation. Is that okay, Vijay?
Oh, Dravida Prabhu, better than okay.
Okay.
Breathtaking answer to my question. Thank you very much.
That's a new
Hare
one.
Krishna.
I can't breathe.
Yes, it is a new one, yeah.
Any,
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
okay, Dhanvari?
Yes, Prabhu. I have a question. Very nice class. Abhigachet, is it the past tense or is it an order, Agna Pratna? I'm
sorry, I didn't catch that. What is it? Abhigachet.
Abhigachet.
Yeah, I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, but Prabhupada often talks about this verb. It's a form of the word to go, and I think it may be a form of the imperative. Just like you can say
imperative.
Imperative. That's what you're looking for. Imperative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
in other words, must be done. Must be done.
Yes.
If you're interested in Vigyan, realized knowledge of Tat, and that Tat is the absolute truth. If one is goal, Artha, if you value, Artha is a value, realized knowledge, genuine knowledge of the absolute truth, then you must go to a realized guru. That's what that means.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Anything else? Balaranji?
Yeah, and
then we'll end with this.
in Srila Prabhupada's time, I mean, when he was, physically here, personally on the planet, and even after that, it was this idea of accepting a guru was, in some ways, easy in the sense that devotees didn't have to really, pick. They didn't have to choose their guru, so to say, because Prabhupada was there and everybody got initiated from Prabhupada.
Right.
And then even after that, in the Zonalacharya days, I mean, people argue that there were terrible days and this and that and whatever, but
Let's not get into that now with the last 30 seconds.
yeah, we won't get into that now. But one thing, it was easier to choose your guru because there was one guru for a particular
Yes,
zone.
yes, yeah.
So do you have any advice for devotees nowadays? Because it seems like, you know, sometimes they have challenges finding their guru.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, maybe it takes a long time to find their guru and, you know.
Well, the only thing I can advise, because of the internet, because of the accessibility of hearing, you know, it used to be that, well, he never came here, so I never heard him. But now you can hear. And you can, the discount, there's Tree, there's so many, YouTube. You can hear from a wide variety of devotees. And many have written books. You can read books. Hare Krishna. Did you want to sit? We're almost through with the class, but you're welcome to sit. You give her the seat right behind you. Yeah, thank you. So that's the key. That's the key way in which you associate, is to hear. So that's available, and if someone is interested, they should hear from a variety of voices. You know, we have some wonderful devotees who are taking disciples, and experienced long-time devotees, and one should, you know, kind of fill up his iPad or whatever, iPod. iPods are passé. I'm sorry. I'm way back in the 2000s. Whatever, your phone. Everything's on the phone now. And that's, to me, that would be the best way, especially now that travel is restricted. I mean, it's nice. What's nice to do if the guru comes within range, so to speak, to travel and see, because there's inevitable. There's more involved in, you know, kirtan and personal interaction. So, but now, especially when travel is restricted, that would be what I would do. Would hear a wide variety of voices of gurus, and see what, you know, really struck my heart. That's all I could advise on that. You know, that's probably the best way. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bo.